Okay. Hello out there to my child development students and parents and anybody else who's watching. Today we have a very special guest. You are in for a treat. The person who is joining us today, her name is Sharon Wong. She is my good friend for years, since high school. I think since high school. Wow, it's been such a long time. Such a great time to be able to talk with her. And so she's going to be talking about food allergies from a personal perspective. And so she is a teacher, a mom, a blogger. She's been working with food allergies. So she is an advocate for food allergy, and she is a new author. So she's going to be sharing about her book. So stick to this video through the end, and you'll be able to hear about her book. So on that note, I want to be able to let Sharon share about herself. So yes, so Sharon, if you could just share about yourself and then just give us talk about your experience and background with food allergy.
Sure. Hey, Maria, thank you so much for inviting me to speak with your students. And it's really a pleasure to join you today. And my name is Sharon Wong, and I used to be a teacher before I became a mom. And so I can totally understand some of the experiences that you guys are going to go through very soon when you start teaching. And I have two children. They're both in college now, and they both have food allergies. My younger one had very severe food allergies. And I remember when he started preschool, his teacher said, "Oh, if I had known that he has an EpiPen, I wouldn't have let you in or let him in." And I was like really taken aback and by her statement. And so I didn't really know what to do, but I continued to work with her, and she ended up being really nice and really super supportive. And that particular preschool ended up having a reputation in the city that I live in as a school that really forgets food allergies, is really supportive and very kind. And I was really happy with the end result, even though the first conversation about my son was a little bit shocking. And then later on, like a few years later, when my son was in elementary school, I was thinking about middle school for my children. And one of the administrators for a middle school told me that I don't do food allergies. I don't know anything about it. You need to talk to your friends, and you need to talk to your doctor, and you need to consider homeschooling your child. And that statement is actually kind of discriminatory because, my children go to public school. And so, they have, they deserve access to their schools, and the schools need to really accommodate them for their food allergies because of food allergies is considered a life-threatening medical condition, and is fully protected by ADA civil rights law legislation called Section 504. And so that's how I ended up becoming an advocate and blogger and author. And because I really felt like it was important to educate my community about food allergies, and how serious it was, and how much we need awareness to save lives and to have access to EpiPens. And so I was fortunate to be able to help out with some legislation in 2014 so that the public schools would have EpiPens in stock.
Good. That's surprising. When you were telling me, it was surprising to hear how the teachers were telling you to homeschool your child because they didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
But you're able to, it sounds like, educate them. And
I tried very much. And, even if I was not able to educate that particular person personally, I think that the passage of that law for this called SB 1266, I think passing that law kind of made it really important to understand, okay, now we have to have these EpiPens in school, and why? Why do we have to have those EpiPens? And it kind of brings on that conversation about, this is to save lives, and how do we prepare for this, and how do we how can we prevent these life-threatening allergic events?
Right. Good. Wow. And yeah, to have that done. But I'm glad that that worked out for your kids while they were in school.
Mhm.
So, how has working with food allergy shaped your views about nutrition?
Well, one of the things about food allergies is that, it's a lot of different foods. Like there are 8 foods that cause about 90% of all allergic reactions. And some of the top 8 allergens responsible for those 90% of food allergies are peanuts, tree nuts, milk, eggs, soy, wheat, fish, and shellfish. And then soon sesame will be labeled as one of those top allergens too. And so, it's really hard to think, okay, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. But I think that it's much easier to buy foods that are just like the raw ingredients and to cook with those raw ingredients as opposed to buying processed foods and foods that have labels that say, oh, maybe contain peanuts or tree nuts, right? Then it's a lot easier to bake from scratch instead of buying like a cake that says it may contain peanuts or tree nuts, or cookies that say may contain eggs. Um, so I ended up cooking a lot, and I think that because we ended up cooking a lot and looking at the labels and reading the ingredient labels, I like, what does trans fat mean, and what does it mean when it says it's modified, or modified starch, or whatever it is, right? To think about what do these words mean. And so I think that that's really helped us to try and be a little bit more healthy and a little bit more mindful about what we eat, and simply because we're cooking from scratch so much.
Good. And so it sounds like it really helped you to just learn how to read food labels, and then also just to learn what those ingredients actually meant and
Right,
to be more
right.
aware of that.
Yeah, and then also to optimize our nutrition too, because sometimes when we're eating, when we have food allergies, and let's say we can't have dairy, then we kind of have to think about, well, what nutritional elements of dairy are we missing out on, and to try and make sure that there's no deficits, and to try to include other foods that may, help with our nutrition, and to balance out our nutritional needs. And it could be just not just dairy, but it could be eggs, or the protein from fish and shellfish, or it could be nuts and things like that.
Yeah, and you're kind of mentioning some of them now, but can you tell us the food allergies that your children had growing up?
It was a lot. So my younger son had up to 30 different allergens when he was really little. So it was like peanuts and tree nuts and shellfish and eggs and sesame and a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables. And so it was a little bit overwhelming sometimes to think about. Over time, he outgrew some of those allergens. So then we're down to about 15. And then at the same time, my older son was diagnosed with food allergies too. And then when he was a middle schooler, and so he has peanut, tree nuts, a bunch of fruits and vegetables, actually a lot of fruits and vegetables. And so then now, but there are different allergens from my younger son. So then now we're back to avoiding about 20 to 30 different foods. And so um, it's a lot.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't aware there was 30. I mean, 15 is already a lot,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
yeah, that's a lot of foods to
Yeah.
be
Watch
over.
out for. Yeah. Yeah. And so for me, one of my coping mechanisms at the time was to kind of focus in on what we could have. I made a list of like the things I knew he could eat, and that had no reaction. And then from there, I just kind of like mix and match the ingredients. And that's how I came up with some of my recipes, and just like being able to focus on what we can have. And so I think that as we work with other people's children in the school setting or preschool setting, I think that focusing in on what everybody can have is probably the most inclusive and healthy and safe thing to do. And it takes the burden out of the situation.
Right. Wow, that's incredible. So yeah, so you guys, when you're watching this and you see that, oh, the allergies that Sharon's kids have gone through. She is truly an expert. And so the next question I have for you is, what are the top 3 to 5 facts about food allergy that you would like people who work with children or have kids who have allergies that you would like them to know?
Well, I guess it's probably quite a few, but I would just, okay, first of all, I think that one is that we should know that it's life-threatening. And then 2 is that, inclusion is super important. And then 3 is that, these children have no choice in the situation and they're really vulnerable. And so they really need the adults around them to help them. So to back up a little bit, the first thing that I want people to know is that it's super life-threatening. Food allergies are life-threatening because they can affect major life organs. So like it can cause people to pass out, so their brain, or stop breathing, so their lungs, or they might have their blood pressure might drop, or they might have a heart attack. And so those are major life organs. And it's very different from an intolerance. So somebody could have a food intolerance and they might feel sick a few minutes later, or not a few minutes, they might feel sick, excuse me, they might feel sick hours later, or they might feel sick tomorrow, but it's not life-threatening. They're just not going to feel comfortable. But with food allergies, it's life-threatening. A small speck can cause an anaphylactic reaction. And then, so then in that situation, these people need an epinephrine auto-injector, and they need life-saving medication. And without this epinephrine injection, people can actually die within 5 to 20 minutes. And that's a really shocking number, but it's just a reality. And there have been cases where people didn't have their EpiPens, and then they're like really slow to administer it. And they end up with complications that like really severe complications. And so like, for example, there's this young woman named Chantal who had some ice cream in Las Vegas, and then she didn't have her EpiPen with her, but then paramedics came and administered her EpiPen, and she ended up, they saved her life, but she's in a continued vegetative state for the last, I don't know, 7 to 10 years. It's been a really long time, but I think that that's really tragic, that she's probably never going to recover. Or be the same again, because she used to be like this beautiful, vibrant model. But she it was late. She was late to have her epi because she didn't have it. So it's also really super important to carry 2, because sometimes the first one might not work, or it might, there might be some sort of failure, or somebody just has such a severe reaction that they actually need 2 shots. And so, again, it's just super life-threatening, and it's really important to, if you have a student that comes in, the parent says that they have food allergies, that they might have an auto-injector. So this could be like something that looks like this, or something like this. These are adult doses, but the pediatric doses might be, like for this one, it might be purple or blue. And for this brand, it might be yellow, it might be green. So if you have children that come in and they have an auto injector, that's awesome. And you might want to ask them for trainers so you can practice. And then there's also training videos on these particular brands of auto injectors on their websites. So you can watch a training video and practice with a practice injector. It's also super important to refer to your students' emergency care plan so that you know what to do. So that you can know, okay, this student is allergic to these particular allergens, and these are the symptoms you need to watch out for. And this is how you administer the epinephrine so you can save their life. So because it's life-threatening, it's really important to understand that it's very life-threatening, that you need to have access to epinephrine and know what to do. And an example is that there's a story about this little boy named Elijah, and he was a little preschooler in New York City. And I think during his first week of preschool, his parents brought him in and told the school that he has a dairy allergy. And for some reason, the school didn't connect that, and they served him a grilled cheese sandwich. And so while he was having an anaphylactic reaction, apparently they called the parents, and I'm not sure if they gave him epinephrine. And and then as a result, the parents picked him up, took him to the hospital, and he passed away.
Mm.
And he's like 3 years old. He needed the adults in his life to, one, not serve him his allergen, but if they did, they need to actually give him his life-saving medication. And so in California, there's going to be, there's a bill introduced called AB 2042, and it's to require daycare facilities to create an anaphylaxis plan. And it's, and whether or not that bill passes or not, I hope it does pass. But I think that, you can be the change maker, and you can advocate for creating an anaphylaxis plan for your facility, so that you can look at how can you prevent an allergy reaction and how to prepare for what to do if something should happen. The second thing the second top fact is that it's really super important to consider how can we include these students with food allergies, and to have a compassionate, inclusive attitude. And so, so for example, you can do things like instead of having a food-related party, you can have more crafts and stories and movement and dance and reading a book to celebrate whatever events that you might be having. And whether it be a birthday or St. Patrick's Day or Valentine's Day or Christmas or New Year's or whatever it is that you guys want to celebrate, to be more inclusive and not necessarily have your activities be food-based, because once you have more food-based items or activities, then you introduce more risks. So like stringing pasta can cause issues for somebody with a wheat allergy, or like making pine cone bird feeders with peanut butter or things like that can cause somebody with an allergy to feel scared. And I think that just being inclusive is and having non-food related activities prevents that discussion that sounds like this: oh, we can't do this and this activity because so-and-so has an allergy to whatever. Because what happens when we say things like that is like, oh, so it's so-and-so's fault that we are not doing this. And then that's when bullying happens, and it can really hurt children. It can really hurt their self-esteem. And so lastly, these children, especially when they're super young, is that they're really vulnerable. They can't read, they don't have enough life experience to recognize their allergens. And they're relying 100% on the adults that are around them to take care of them. And they have no choice about their condition. There's just nothing that they can do about their food allergies. It's not something that they wanted to have. It's not something that they can prevent or think themselves out of. It just is. And it's really super hard for anybody to understand food allergies, because it's unpredictable, and it's food is something that's supposed to nurture us, but it can also harm certain people. And so it's really hard. I can totally understand how it's really hard for people to understand, but now that I've shared some of these stories with you, it's really important for you to learn more about what is food allergies and how do you prevent it from happening, how do you prevent an allergic reaction, and how do you respond to anaphylaxis.
Wow, you gave us so much good information and actionable steps. And I hope that everyone who's listening was taking notes or at least just trying to remember, because I like the last thing. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that you said that was really important, but just that when young children are at school or wherever they are dependent on the adults. And so because they don't know, because you can't trust for them to just reach for the food that they're not allergic to, because it might not be there, or maybe there's hidden allergies. And so very true about that. They need adults to be aware and that advocate for them. So great. Thank you so much for all that information. I love the ideas about the parties, because sometimes even if there are no food allergies, I think just having parties that are not centered around food, that children can be doing other things, I think is really valuable. So then we can know that we can have fun. Not that we don't need food to have fun, but it's that there's other focuses. So that is a fantastic idea. I love that one. And I do hope that bill passes too, the one that you mentioned in California. And so that's really important to have that. But like your Sharon was saying, was that you guys can be the advocate for children and to just be able to watch them and make sure that they're okay. So you did share some great tips. Are there any other tips about nutrition or food allergy that you would like parents or other people who work with kids to know?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the most important things that we can do when we're working with children with food allergies is that we need to read labels. Like we need to read those ingredient labels. And there's a trick that food allergy parents use is read the label twice. Read it at the store, read it before you put it away, and read it again before you serve it. Because sometimes food manufacturers might change their ingredients without notice. So you might be using this particular product and it's completely safe, but then sometimes like at a different facility, or they might change the recipe, it may contain the allergen without any notification. And so it's really important to read the labels for what's obviously there. But then there's also the part that's not visible, which is really hard to wrap around your brain around. It's really hard. So there's sometimes you might see something on the label about it may contain wheat, or it may contain soy, or it may be made on a shared facility with sesame, or it may be made in shared equipment with fish or shellfish or something like that. So you'll see these allergen advisories. Well, the thing is that if it's not there, doesn't mean that it doesn't have an allergen advisories, because those allergen advisories, those may contain statements, are not required, nor are they regulated. So it's really great if it's there, because then at least you know. But when you don't see it, you still have to think about, is it possible that this allergen is in the ingredients? So usually people need to like call the manufacturer, or they need, for me, I look at the shelves and I look and see if, this particular brand has other products that contain my children's allergens. And that usually is a clue that there's a chance for cross contact. And then besides the allergen advisories, and when you read the label, sometimes there are invisible ingredients. Like, so for example, my favorite example is hot dog buns. So there's sesame is the ninth most common allergen. Okay, and so hot dog buns, there's two types. There's hot dog buns with sesame on top, and there's hot dog buns that don't have sesame on top. So the ones that have sesame on top, you obviously know that you can't serve those, and you can't pick them off and then serve it. It's just absolutely no. However, the thing about those hot dog buns is that if you read the ingredient labels very carefully, at the very last ingredient, it's going to say it has sesame in it. I'm like, how? How does it possibly have sesame in it, even though you can't see it? Well, apparently it's very common for manufacturers to grind up sesame into a paste and put it into the bread dough as a flavor enhancer to make it super tasty. So you can't tell by looking at it whether or not it has sesame, but it does indeed have sesame in there. And so so for that reason, it's really super important when you're working with children that have allergies to serve products that have an ingredient label, so that you can check that that product is going to be safe, and have the parents bring in the labels if needed. And then the other minefield for reading labels is that there has been a trend in the last few years where manufacturers will include an allergen into the product on purpose. So a few years ago, there was this cracker and cheese brand. There's those little crackers, a little tub with a little bit of cheese and you use a little stick and spread your little cheese on the crackers. Well, they added peanut powder to those crackers. So why would they add peanut powder to cheesy crackers? And it's so that they just introduce it. So then they just put peanut on it. So there's no more questions about whether or not these cheesy crackers have peanuts. And it's because yeah, but I don't know. Anyways, it's really important to read the labels. That's a very important tip for what's obviously there. It's also important to read the labels and look for those allergen advisories and to see if there's a potential for cross contact. And sometimes you can't even tell. You can't tell by looking at it, and you have to ask the manufacturer. And then lastly, sometimes there are allergens that are deliberately added into the products and it doesn't make any sense, or it's just not obvious, you can't see it, but it's an invisible ingredient. So reading labels is like the key to at least, eliminating most of the allergens that you may encounter.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah. I was taking notes because there's these things I wasn't aware of, but I do have a question. So do you mention that they put allergens into food products? Do they list it though?
They list it. Yes.
Okay. So they listed.
Yeah.
It's just that we're not sure why on earth they put it in.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So for those top 8 allergens plus shellfish, it's required to be listed in the ingredient list in plain English. So they shouldn't be listing it in like Latin or something. For example, it has to be plain English. And but then, right now, sesame has been recently approved to be listed as in plain English as well. But previously, it was allowed for them to not list sesame as an ingredient, but it was considered a spice. So sometimes when an ingredient might say natural spices or natural flavorings or something like that, it might contain sesame. And so, you just never know. Right now, like there may be some kids who it's a less common allergen, but like maybe there are people who are allergic to mustard, which is a spice, right? But there's no requirement for mustard to be listed as mustard on the ingredient list. It can be called natural spices or natural flavorings. And so it's very hard to tell. So depending on what are the students' allergens, then you need to, it may not necessarily be obvious. So I would, as a teacher, I would ask the parents, to confirm whether or not this product is safe for the kids. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I don't know about you guys watching, but I'm learning a lot. And yeah, so you can never be too careful. So you guys learn from Sharon, read those food labels, because just because you might not think that it's in there, it could still be in there. That's very eye-opening to see. I have food allergies too. So now I'm going to read that label 3 times.
Yes.
Right? 3 times, at least 3 times, because like you said, some manufacturers, they change their ingredients. Yeah. Okay.
Can I add one more thing about reading labels?
Oh, please.
Yeah. So the other area that's kind of another minefield is reading the ingredient labels for non-food products. So things like you might have like soap at your school, or maybe lotions, or different non-food products, maybe pet food, or maybe, whatever. Those are, you should read the ingredient labels for those. The hard part about reading labels for non-food ingredients, like personal products or things like that, is that sometimes the food manufacturer, the manufacturers might list it with a scientific name, or it might list it in Latin. Like maybe, instead of saying sunflower oil, it'll use like the Latin name for sunflowers, something like that. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to be aware, like, when you are introducing new personal care products, like hand sanitizer or whatever, you just got to be aware and look at those labels too.
Great, such great tips. And I think it's just so practical. So I hope you guys heard that closely, especially those of you who have children and are working with children, because there is a lot out there, and we have to be aware for them. So thank you, Sharon, for sharing all those valuable tips. I think hopefully that will help all the viewers learn how to be just extra careful when it comes to children who have allergies. So now I do want to give you the chance to talk about your cookbook, because this cookbook is birthed out of your experiences, and then that you also address allergens in foods because you've used that to help you with your cookbook. So please tell us about your book and just who
Yeah,
would benefit from it.
so I just recently wrote this cookbook called the Chinese Instant Pot Cookbook. And it's 60 quick and easy classic recipes, and about using the Instant Pot to cook Chinese food. And it's pretty exciting. I wrote the cookbook. I wrote a cookbook that I would want to use, so the recipes are like 99% nut-free and dairy-free. There's like one recipe that uses cheese as a sprinkle, but you can just leave it out and it'll be totally fine, or use a dairy-free version. There are other allergens in the cookbook, like maybe shellfish or sauce, or if you have shellfish allergies, or maybe soy, or maybe sesame, or whatever. And so I try to make the cookbook as adaptable as I possibly could, and like easy to swap out allergens, or to look at the variations and say, okay, this recipe contains shrimp, maybe I can try it with chicken or something like that. And so, it's just a really, I hope that it would be a great stepping stone for people to incorporate Asian food in their diet if they are living with food allergies, or if they are, cooking for somebody that has food allergies. Maybe you don't personally, but maybe you're cooking for somebody. So this is a good resource. And I also recommend this book for people who might want to cook with an Instant Pot, which can come in handy in your life if you like have if you're living in you don't have access to a kitchen, or if you're like remodeling your house, or something happened to your stove, or or you're traveling or whatever. It's just a really good, convenient tool to have, or a small kitchen appliance. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I actually need to get an Instant Pot after listening to you, because I don't have one, and I want to get Sharon's cookbook because I want to see it for the allergies and stuff, the modifications. And I think, because I honestly don't know of any other Chinese cookbook recipe books that deal with allergies, and that's one food that I grew up with. And when I developed some allergies, I wish that I have to figure out some way to have it. So I think, Sharon, your book will definitely be helpful for that. So yeah, again, I'm just so thankful that you could come and just talk to my students. I know that you have a blog, and so I'm just going to let you talk about that. So for those of you who are watching and they want to support you and get your cookbook and follow you on different social media, just quickly tell us what platforms you're on.
Well, the name of my blog is called Nut Free Walk. And that's the walk part is WOK, not WALK. So it's Nut Free Walk. And my Instagram handle is the same. And also on Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest, whatever. My handle is also Nut Free Walk.
Great. And I'm going to have all those links down in the description below. So I'm going to have a link to the book that you can purchase, and then a link to all the social media platforms that Sharon is a part of, her blog, her Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever else that she's willing to share. It will be down below, so you can know how to contact her, how to follow her, how to just learn from her, continue learning from her. So video is not the end. Please support her, please follow her, and then use that knowledge to be able to help the children in your life. So Sharon, thank you once again for being with us. I truly value all the information you have. It is, like I said, I was taking notes. I've learned a lot. And so, yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me join you today. It was such a pleasure.
Great. Okay, so remember, subscribe to my channel, like this video, please, and then go to all the links that I'm going to post for Sharon, and then you can know exactly how to support and follow her. All right, thank you for watching.
Bye, thank you.